Hey everyone, my name is Mike Vaughn. I'm a writer for Geek Vibes Nation. I'm also the author of The Ultimate Guide to Strange Cinema.
And I'm Dylan Gonzalez. I'm the editorial director for GeekVibesNation.com and also a co-host of the Home Dance Film Festival podcast.
And welcome to a new Video Addict new release roundup. My name is Mike, as I said. And if you're new here, what we do is we go back and forth and we talk about the latest home video releases. Some are good, some are bad, but you know what? We always have a really fun time talking about them. But I'm going to let you start this party off.
I appreciate it. I have one that I'm very excited about. This came out a few months ago, so some of you may already own this, but I was really excited to check this one out. Even though I just missed the titular holiday, this is the Scream Factory release of My Bloody Valentine. It is the classic one, not the remake from the 2000s, which I have seen and I remember enjoying. So if that ever got a 4K release, I would also be more than glad to snatch that up. But for now, we have this 3-disc release, the 4K disc in the unrated form, the Blu-ray, the unrated in Blu-ray, and the theatrical cut on Blu-ray. And
Nice.
both of the Blu-rays have all kinds of special features that I will kind of get into. With this being such an iconic slasher, I probably won't go too in depth on things, but just general plot stuff. Decades ago, there was a man who, for reasons, started going on a rampage throughout a town on Valentine's Day, and ever since then, the town has basically like banished Valentine's Day and like never celebrated, just to kind of make sure not to tempt this malevolent person to ever come back, this mythical figure almost, to come back and terrorize the town until all these decades later, they decide to hold their first Valentine's Day in forever. And then, surprise, surprise, people start getting picked off one by one. And it's your typical slasher flick where you just go one by one, just seeing people getting picked off. And then, like, some people are making some bad decisions for, like, the good of the town as rather than, like, self-interest and all this kinds of stuff. And classic slasher, I think it's a really good one. I think it's up there with some of the better like slashers that I've seen. It has a really like kind of an iconic design of the gas mask and the like the mining suit that they have on. I think that's a pretty cool get up in terms of a slasher character. And this really goes for the jugular in terms of gore. There's some really great kills in this one, and not just like your typical knife piercing flesh kills. There's like, you see the remnants of like I'll just say a laundry room kill, which I think is a pretty fun one. But there's some really great special effects, like practical like makeup effects work that I think are really cool. And some of that actually had to be toned down from the unrated cut, which I'll kind of get into here in a second. But the identity of the killer is a little I've seen some people kind of get irritated, like they almost kind of threw like a dart at a dartboard. But I was fine with how it kind of turned out, and just rewatching it, whether or not they actually like sow the seeds for the reveal, I mean, I think it's a fine reveal. Mostly you're just there for the kills and the basic character interactions. And I think that all works on a basic level. But in terms of this, you do get the unrated cut in 4K, and you do get a breakdown on the third disc, which is the theatrical cut of, you get like a 13-minute video showing the differences between the theatrical cut and the unrated cut. And they do cut out quite a bit in terms of gore and like almost like Friday the 13th level, like the arrow going through the throat. There's a lot of stuff like that going on where they just kind of like cut scenes down and just like eliminated a lot of mostly gore and like I think a little bit of nudity, but mostly it's gore. Overall, you get the unrated cut on 4K. This is from a 4K restoration of the original camera negative. This was released on standard Blu-ray, I believe in 2020 from Scream Factory. And at that time, I do not have that release, but from what I've seen online, it seems that the unrated material maybe didn't blend completely seamlessly with the theatrical material. It seems that they've done a lot better job with this 4K presentation of integrating the two, because you can barely tell a difference between what is the unrated material and what is the standard theatrical material. So even if you have the previous Blu-ray with the unrated cut, I think you'll want, if you're 4K capable, I think you'll really enjoy this upgrade in terms of seeing a seamless presentation between like with how it was originally supposed to look with the all the extra gore and goopiness and stuff. It's a nice, well-rounded version of the material. But if you do want to see the theatrical cut, you do have that on that third Blu-ray disc, and it also has been given a restoration, and then you get the unrated cut on the Blu-ray as well. So either way you want to experience things, you can experience them, but only on 4K can you get the unrated cut. And you get the audio commentary from the director is on the 4K disc as well as the unrated disc. You also get a ton of special features, including a 47-minute Q&A that was, I believe, in the 2010s. I think it was around like 2012 or so that was held. You do get 7 individual interviews with the cast and some of the creative team. There's like 4 or 5 interviews with different cast members, and then you get like a special effects artist and like another like producer, I believe. And then you also get like some trailers and TV spots and all that stuff. The film, the 4K disc does come with the original dual mono 2.0, as well as a 5.1 stereo track, which I think, even though it expands it from its like a normal mono roots, it kind of preserves the artistic integrity of what they were going for. It doesn't sound too off or anything. So both soundtracks are pretty good, but you do have the original score or the original track from what I can tell. A+ audio visual presentation, tons of special features. This has just been treated so well by Scream Factory, and I think anyone who's a fan of the film will want to check this out. I don't think there's a reversible cover art. Let me check. No, there's not, but you do. I'm not sure. As far as I know, my copy still had a slipcover, but if you wanted the slipcover, you should probably get it sooner rather than later, because I know this is a pretty popular title. So it won't be around for long if it is still around. So make sure to get it sooner. And it's a great film, and I think it's worth it.
Nice. Yeah, I really like that one. I love how like at the end, like this isn't a spoiler, but like they do smart things, like they call the cops, and the cops are there right away, and they like
Yeah,
they're like, okay, we need to get our ass out of here. Like it's not safe. It's like making good decisions in a slasher movie.
it's refreshing.
Yeah, even though I love how it's supposed to be middle America, but they're clearly Canadian. They're all like the lead actor is very Canadian. It's kind of hilarious. So my first title is Rick and Morty season 7, and I'm really excited because I finally got to watch this season in its entirety. It was like really good excuse to like sit down and like binge watch it. Here is the I always like that they do like a very non-traditional cover. Here's the back. If you want to see a better view of this, I'll pop this open for you with the episode list. Yeah, so this is a really, really good season. I think it's probably one of the stronger seasons in the like recent Rick and Morty. You have some really stellar episodes. The Mr. Poopy Butthole episode is great. It has the infamous spaghetti episode, which it's a very heavy episode, but I think it certainly will go down as one of those like very classic Rick and Morty think piece kind of episodes. You finally get a resolution to Rick Prime, which is great. Try to be very vague. Hugh Jackman has a voice cameo in it, which is amazing. It's a really great season. There's a few duds, but honestly, I feel like it's more hits than misses this time around. There is really no features. It's just the show looking really good, but it's nice to have this on physical media. It wouldn't surprise me if down the road they do a 1 through 7 season Blu-ray set like they have done in the past. So just to let you all know, if you haven't collected any of these and you're just starting, maybe wait a little bit and you can get it all in one shebang, because they're usually priced pretty accordingly and not too outrageous for like the complete to have a complete set. So and I do believe that there is season 1 through 6 that you can buy along with this, obviously, but like if you want the whole season, just wait. Or if you've been collecting it since, well, I mean, it's a no-brainer, just get this. Didn't come with a poster, I know sometimes they do, or they have in the past. This one does not, unfortunately. I do have one that has a poster, but we're not there yet. But yeah, really solid season. If you're a Rick and Morty fan and you've been a little lax lately or a little burnt out, I highly recommend the season. It's really fantastic.
Yeah, I was really glad to catch up on that season because, like you said, it is one of the better ones they've had. They had a few seasons of inconsistency, and I was wondering how they would like fare with the departure of one of their main voice actors who had some
Yeah.
easy stuff going on behind the scenes. So, but I think they really is even better for them like going in this season. So they
Yeah.
didn't miss a beat, and it's just a better show for it.
Yeah, I didn't really notice, honestly. Like, if you would have told me, like, this was the season where they didn't have Justin Roiland doing the voice acting. I mean, I'm like, I don't know. I mean, like, I think I read that they had over 200 people apply for that job. But yeah, I think it's pretty seamless. And hopefully that doesn't deter anybody because I don't think it's distracting, honestly. I mean, I know I've looked at some video essays where they were like, well, it's a little teeny bit noticeable. And I'm like, I don't think so. But anyways, it's a great season though, so I wouldn't let that like bother you.
Absolutely. And like you said, like after every season, they'll probably pretty much do a new complete season set. So just go with your own guidance on what you want to want to collect. My next title is one from our friends at Deaf Crocodile, and it is World War III. It is one of the few titles from the label that is a more of a modern title. Usually I'm talking about like weird, like Czech films or like from the past or like cool animation. But and I say weird as like a term of endearment because I love everything they put out. But you can kind of see this artwork underneath. This was actually an Iranian film that was the Iranian submission for the Academy Awards and for the 2023 Oscars. It did not get nominated, but in my opinion, it should have because this is actually one of my favorite discoveries, like overall, not just from this label that I've seen in quite some time. It really blew me away. I was a very, very big fan of this film, and it is a. I'll kind of try to tell the plot without spoiling anything, but it is about a man who is kind of down on his luck. He is a day laborer, so he's trying to pick up work wherever he can, and he gets picked up to do like construction crew stuff on a film set where they are about to film this like World War II era movie. And while they are on set, the man who is supposed to play Hitler, he ends up having a medical event and he cannot perform anymore. So the producers just need someone. So they pick this guy and they just like usher him in to like play this role of Hitler. And they're just like, okay, don't worry about it. We'll just like dub over your voice and stuff. You just like count and we'll just do this. So it's like this man is kind of thrust into this event that he doesn't really like, he's not prepared for, he's not an actor, but he's all of a sudden kind of being treated pretty well and being put in this new position, while also he has like a pseudo girlfriend that comes into the picture and like kind of gets involved in a way that I won't kind of get into too much. But what this is really dealing with is it's like a commentary on like class disparity and like how people are treated like with different class levels. And it's really powerful how you see this man, he's like going on this journey and the way he's being treated by like the producers and the director, and then he gets involved in some very dramatic things, and it kind of puts everyone like on high alert. I'm trying to be very vague, sorry, but it's just a very, very effective class commentary movie. I know there's like been a lot of like eat the rich movies in the past several years, especially because I think we're kind of in that mindset, especially in the past few years. But the way this evolves, it's like, I know this is a cliche term to use, but it's very Hitchcockian, like, because you kind of start to get to a point where you're unsure of what to believe in certain points. And the way this movie builds to its finale is very shocking. And like how it ends, I was just like kind of clapping that it was so audacious. And once again, super vague, but I do not want to ruin this experience for anyone who watches it because it's a knockout and I really, really enjoyed it. It is like foreign film or English language, like international film or English language film. it is one of the best things that I've seen in quite a while. So this would, like, if I had seen it the year it came out, it probably would have made my top 10. I really, really enjoyed it. This Blu-ray that I thankfully discovered through Deaf Crocodile, it's a brand new film, looks great. It has the original Persian dialogue and DTS 5.1. It does have a new commentary track from film critic Walter Chaw, I believe. And then there's also an hour-long interview with the director and writer, which the writer is actually translating in real time for the director, and the writer, he speaks English as well. So it's a really great hour-long interview with them and kind of learning about their background. And like the director actually used to be an actor, and then he switched to directing, so you get to hear a little bit about his journey on that. There is a booklet here, but unlike most booklets, there's not actually an essay here. There's a director's statement and like several different assessments from different filmmakers, like telling their thoughts on the movie. So you get people like Antonio Campos, who I recently talked about on his films Simon Killer, or Ramin Barani, a bunch of filmmakers just talking, like giving kind of pull quotes about this. So not your typical deep dive in the booklet, but still some pretty interesting things in there. But if you like international cinema, World War III it knocked me sideways. I really, really loved it. I think anyone who watches our channel that's into it would really like it. I think our editor Andre would really like it. So this is my shout out to them. I want everyone to watch it. It's a great movie.
Nice. Yeah, that's always a fun label, because it's always like stuff that's not necessarily on our radar, but yeah, that sounds really cool. So my next one is the remake of the Manchurian Candidate. We did not too long ago got we have the original 4K now, and so this is the remake with Denzel Washington, Meryl Streep, and Liv Schreiber. So yeah, and then no reversible art. Here's the inside. So I had not seen this before. I'm a really big fan of the original, and I'm a little mixed with this. So this is the Jonathan Demme film, and you can kind of get that vibe because he always had a certain style. He uses his go-to DP, the same one for he used multiple times, probably most known for shooting Sons of the Lambs. He's also very much known for his like soundtracks, and not only just his soundtracks, but like the irreverent kind of way that he uses music in his films. All of that is really present, and I think it's an interesting kind of update using, I believe that this is set during the Gulf War instead of the original. I'm trying to think if the original was set in Vietnam conflict or Korea. It's one of the two. But yeah, I like that they kind of updated this in a way that feels a little bit more contemporary. Obviously, Meryl Streep now plays the heavy. I really think it's interesting that I haven't read the book that this is based on, but just going by like the original movie, there's a really interesting sort of subplot that suggests that Liv Schreiber's character and the mother character are maybe intimate. Which adds like a layer of just ickiness to it. They don't make it super overt, but they push it far enough where you can kind of make that leap. But I think it's intriguing. I think it's really engaging. I think it's maybe not paced the best. That would be like one of my big complaints. But I think like the ending fucking sucks. I hated the ending. I hate how they ended it. It doesn't really make sense when you think about it, but also it feels very much like you, I'm trying to be vague here. Like you can tell this was a Hollywood ending. Like you could tell that this was like studio notes being like, this is how you have to end it. I don't know if it's enough to just like really kill the movie for me. I think it's still a really good journey to be on. It does fold in these things about like Gulf War syndrome and like PTSD and stuff. Whether or not they really do anything meaningful with those themes, I mean, I think they're kind of lip service to the greater plot, but it is interesting seeing those kind of contextually touched upon in this movie. And it's so eerie, though, how like this movie's more relevant now than I think it was when it was made in 2004. So I think it's a really interesting movie. I wouldn't say, again, I think if the ending was maybe retold, I think it would be a great movie. But we do have a nice array of features. And I would say that this looks really good overall. Things look really crisp and clean. It doesn't look over processed or like this, like overly saturated. I know like some early 2000 films kind of fall victim to that a little bit, but I think it looks really nice here and it has a nice natural kind of look to it. No complaints there. I mean, like I haven't owned this previously, so I can't like really compare it to any other release, but just looking at it, I can kind of tell that like this is probably like the best this has ever looked. And again, I believe this is like a mixture of like some new special features along with some like legacy stuff. So yeah, I don't know. The movie, I mean, I recommend the release. It's an awesome release. The movie itself, I think, is fine. I just wish the ending was different.
I have not seen this one since I saw it in theaters back in 2004, so 20 years ago. So
Hmm.
it's not crystal clear up in here. But since I did get to watch the original last year when the 4K came out, I'm interested to see how this compares now that I'm revisiting it 20 years later with that new content. I don't think I'd seen the original whenever I saw this one in theaters. So I'm sure it'll be a much more jarring experience having those two
Mhm.
comparisons, but I'm glad that if I'm going to revisit it, it is on 4K. So I'm thankful for Kino for at least putting it out. And I do really like that slipcover that you were showing off too. I'm glad that's different from
Yeah.
the standard cover art too. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and the acting is great. I mean, Meryl Streep certainly makes a meal of playing like a villain in this, and I think she doesn't quite go over the top with it, but I mean, me for me personally, I would say she could have even went a little bit further with it, but like I do really love her characterization, and I mean, I think it's as good as Angela Lansbury in the original, but yeah, no, I'd be curious to see what you think when you check this out.
Absolutely. I'm excited about it. My next release, it is a TV show. It is one that I watched also first run. I used to watch this with my mom, who watches the show. So this should be a walk down memory lane for her. This is the universal release of Heroes, the complete collection. This was back before the market was completely saturated by superhero stuff. But I'll just show this off real quick. We have seasons 1 and 2 in one case here. It is your standard kind of split case like this. Got 1 and 2. You got 3 and 4 together, which was the end of the original run of the show. Here, got all kinds of discs. And then finally, this was revived, I believe in like 2015 or so, with Heroes Reborn, which is these have all been released previously on Blu-ray. So this is just basically a repackage. This was released on its own, and then each individual season was released on its own. And all of these are reusing the same disc, which I'll kind of get into in a little bit. But watching Heroes and returning to Heroes, it's still kind of an inconsistent time. The first season, I remember watching it. It was some of the most like thrilling TV at the time. Like it was a really good. Like it was. I love superheroes at the time. I still do to an extent, but it's complicated now. But at the time, especially, I loved superhero content. Seeing all these normal people getting cool powers and like trying to figure out what to do with them and like figuring themselves out. While there's also kind of this underlying mystery element of there's like a kind of a serial killer aspect going through especially the beginning of the first season where these heroes are being targeted and killed. Following that week after week and trying to like figure out what was going on and everything, it was a really thrilling first season. I really loved it, and there's a lot of really fun characters that developed very well. The second season really got hit hard because we just came off of one. It was hit by the writer's strike, so it was condensed, and also it just really threw off the rhythm of everything. Quality wise and number of episodes wise, it took a dive, and it never really quite rebounded from that really excellent first season. The second season was just very kind of all over the place and didn't really seem to know where it wanted to go. In the third and fourth seasons, there would be moments where you would see kind of the glimpses of the glory of the first season, but still, it just never really got back on track of that really, really top quality of the first season. And then Heroes Reborn, it came several years after the show ended, like 4 or 5 years after the show ended, and it once again, it didn't really feel like there was a reason for it to exist. It was fine, but when it was canceled, I didn't really care because but by that point, Heroes had just kind of petered out for me and just never really hit that sweet spot. But whenever it hits really hard, and I really do enjoy it. And being able to watch it, like binge watching it, and kind of seeing the arcs, it does play a little bit better. And of course, with 90 episodes, I wasn't able to rewatch every single episode prior to this just because I'm human. But rewatching key like arcs from different seasons and stuff and just getting into it and revisiting it that way, I think it does play a little bit better. But overall, it's still a very inconsistent experience. So I can't like be like beginning to end Heroes is a masterpiece. It's not, but it is very good when it is good. So these were released previously, like I said. The first 2 seasons, I believe, were released with a VC1 encode, which is the old codec prior to AVC. So these look a little raggedy. I believe this was released in 2008. Those first were released. So these are a little bit older. And then the next 2 seasons were like 2009 and 10. So they were as the seasons came out. So especially all these first 4 seasons are a little bit older. At least the latter 2, I believe, transition to ABC encoding. They're fine. They're passable. They're just not like pristine video quality, unfortunately. But it's what we've always had. Unless it gets a 4K remaster and like a 4K release, I think this is the best we're gonna get. But I wish we would, in terms of like how this release stacks up. Older inconsistent episode quality. Heroes Reborn is a little bit better quality wise because it was like 2015. It's pretty solid. Each season, I believe, has DTS 5.1 audio. All the special features are, of course, carried over because they're the original disc. The main reason for anyone who owns this to purchase again, like I owned all of these except Heroes Reborn, and I'm not sure if my copies are handy. No, they're all the way over here. But my first season, I only had on HD DVD, and it's about the size of this. So for just space concerns, I'm really glad to have this all in just like one kind of concise packaging. But other than that, if you own it, there's not really any reason besides shelf space that you would want to revisit these. If you don't have it yet, this is a nice way to buy it. Everything, all Heroes content is in this box set. You don't have to worry about getting 5 different releases, so that's pretty cool. But overall, inconsistent series. It's still fun, but just not great all the way through. But a good release until they probably never get around to remastering it. But if they do, that'll be the release to get. But otherwise, this is the release to get.
Yeah, and like a documentary on that would be probably interesting because I hear that like some of the behind the scenes stuff seems a little bit more interesting than some of the like actual like episodes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I'm with my releases, I'm sticking with Kino Studio Classics, their 4K release, and this is Changing Lanes. And so we got the same, nothing special inside. So I'd seen this before and I didn't really like it, but it was weird because like it got really good reviews. So I was like, all right, this is a good time to like reset, watch it again, see how I feel. I think I softened to it a little bit more on my second viewing, but like this is one of those like cat and mouse kind of games movies. It's like Ben Affleck's character and Sam Jackson's character are both kind of doing their own thing. They literally collide, and instead of like swapping insurance, like Sam Jackson wants to do, like Ben Affleck's like, no, peace out, bye. And through like some like contrivances, there's a important document that somehow got mixed up that Sam Jackson has. So it's this weird back and forth, like manipulating each other and stuff. I like that concept. I think it's engaging for a certain amount of time, but then I don't know. Like Ben Affleck's character is like very inconsistent. We're supposed to believe he's this like very ambitious lawyer and he's like wants to rise to the top. His like wife, the father is like one of like the owners of like the law firm. So he's like basically playing the game, trying to get ahead. And this document that he needs is sort of the MacGuffin of the movie, is basically like proof that I guess Ben Affleck's character didn't like legally coerce a signature out of this person, this elderly person. Again, it's very contrived. It's just to kind of be like, okay, we need to link these guys together and they can't just peace out and then do their own thing. So I get it. I don't hate that part of it. I actually think like it's kind of intriguing how they like weave this web, but like Ben Affleck's character is just so inconsistent. There's times that I'm like, he seems like deep down he's actually a nice guy, but then he does something really shitty. And then he's like, oh, but I feel really bad about it. But then he does something shitty again. And ultimately, I won't say where his character ends up, but because I don't want to spoil it, but it's a little bit predictable. Like the ending is very, you can probably see where it's going, and it doesn't ever really push the envelope on like what it can do as far as shock value or just like a really unpredictable ending. It's very by the books. So I'm still a little bit lukewarm on it. It is, however, a really nice release. We do get a commentary track. We get some featurettes, some deleted and extended scenes, and a trailer. Really nice array of features. I mean, I always love a commentary track, so that's always fun. I think like it's interesting seeing like a really young Ben Affleck really sort of push his acting. This was 2002. Sam Jackson is not playing like his typical over the top character, which he always feels wasted in this, but he's really good. So I don't hate that. It's a really good cast. Toni Collette is in this. She's she's the goddess. I love her so much. She always makes any role way better. So it's the movies again. I've seen reviews where people think that this is like one of the greatest movies of all time. I think it's fine. Yeah, I don't know. Like this has a legit Rotten Tomato score and like IMDb score. So I don't know. I don't get it. It's just okay. There are aspects of it that I really like. I just don't know if it all gels really well. The character just doesn't feel very consistent, and that's a problem in the writing. And again, it is a little bit like by the numbers. So looks really good. This all kind of like the last movie I talked about, this also comes from a new 4K scan of the original 35 millimeter camera negative. This being an early 2000s film, it looks really nice. You get a really nice clarity. You don't get anything that looks really weird or scrubbed out of like film grain. It does have a really nice natural look. Skin tones look really nice. Colors look very like well maintained throughout. Maybe a little bit of like blurring here and there, but I don't know if that's necessarily just because of how certain things were filmed and then up converted. But I don't think it was as like so bad that it was like distracting. It's just when I sit down and watch something like this, I'm actively looking for stuff like that. But yeah, it's not anything that's gonna like detract from it. It's an overall really nice looking film. It's not a visually great looking film, but the restoration looks nice. It's just the movies, from for me anyway, is just kind of so.
Did you say that was 2002?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm pretty sure I was a weird kid. I would have been around 10 or 11, depending on what time of the year that was released. I just remember being really into the idea of watching Changing Lanes at that age. And I was just like, Mom, we need to go watch Changing Lanes. I'm pretty sure we did go see it in theaters, but either way, I just remember I was amped for it.
That's
So
so funny because you were saying you saw this in theaters and that was 2004. So I was gonna say, like when you said that, I was like, you were very precocious, you know?
absolutely, yeah, I love seeing movies and like inappropriate movies. Like I was like, let's do it. Like let's go see. I was like the only one in like what middle school being like, all right, let's go see Changing Lanes. Let's do it. But I only had that one on DVD, so I was really excited whenever it was announced for 4K, despite whatever the quality of the movie may be, I was glad to, like, if I'm going to revisit it, like once again, like with Manchurian Candidate, if I'm going to revisit it, I'm glad it's on 4K. So I'm glad that Kino keeps rescuing these random ass movies I was interested in as a child. So keep going. I'm all for it. My last title was science fiction, and I'm going to stick kind of in that realm. This is a new Mill Creek release of Icon's Unearthed Star Wars. It is a documentary series that they have where they look through stuff like Star Wars, The Simpsons, Fast and the Furious, Marvel, all kinds of stuff. So this was actually the first one that they did. So I would not be surprised to see more of these released from the company on Blu-ray. This has the 6 episodes that comprise the entire series on one disc, and then another disc with bonus interviews, which, since it needs a whole new disc, you know that it's pretty substantial. But I would have actually preferred that they have expanded this to a 3-disc set and not had 6 like hour-long episodes on one disc. But it's Mill Creek, and we know how they are. So, but for you pretty much know what you're getting with this. I believe this aired on Vice. I believe that they're the home of this documentary series. So this is basically a talking head style exploration. You have people like, for the first time in quite a while, or maybe ever, Marsha Lucas, George Lucas's wife. She is interviewed about this franchise, and you get Anthony Daniels and Billy D. Williams and various like film historians and like cultural historians like weighing in on this. And you pretty much know what you're going to get from this format. It's 2-part episode on A New Hope. Then there's one on Empire Strikes Back, one on Return of the Jedi, one on Phantom Menace, and then like an episode that goes like Attack the Clones and Revenge of the Sith all in one. None of the like newer J.J. Abrams era Star Wars are covered, just the first 6. But it's basic reflections on these movies and like talking about the production. For a fan of this series, it's kind of comforting to have this where you just kind of have people that you like talking about something that you like, and it's not really digging into much that you probably don't already know. Maybe some nuggets here and there, but it's not like a hard-hitting expose of stuff that you've never heard. Sometimes you just want to hear people talking about stuff you like, and that's just kind of what you get here. It's not plunging the depths of stuff, but so overall, it's a pretty decent watch. But the second disc, full of additional interviews, there's only 3 interviews included, but they are the full interviews that they had, and there are over 6 hours of new footage of this. So Marsha Lucas, you get the full like 3-hour and 12-minute interview with her. You get like an almost 3-hour interview with Anthony Daniels. You get like a 40-minute interview with like Billy D. Williams, like uninterrupted. So you get to see all these things that were cut up over episodes, and plus additional footage that didn't make the final cut on this bonus disc, which I think, even if you've seen this series, I think that's a pretty cool addition that they were able to like get all this extra footage for fans to just watch all the way through if they want to. Quality wise, it is Mill Creek, but it is a newer show, so it's some compression artifacts here and there, but mostly it's a pretty clean experience, and it's a documentary show, so you have like a mixture of like new talking heads and like archival footage. Everything looks about as good as it can look within the confines of knowing that the compression is just a little bit pushed to the brink, but pretty decent release and a good like with the special features. So Icons on Earth Star Wars is a solid release if you're a Star Wars fan.
Nice. So this one is something I've heard of and want to eventually check out. I'm just very like not Star Wars out, but I'm a little like trying to cleanse a little bit before the acolytes. But yeah, once I get back into it though, that's like one of those I want to check out. So not my final title, but my final 4K title is one that my poor husband, so I don't know, like, so it's Paint Your Wagon, but Simpsons fans will remember, yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Gonna paint your wagon, gonna paint it fine. Gonna use oil-based paint, cause the wood is pine.
So I've been singing that like all week, and bless him for not divorcing me. But yeah, so here's the back and same cover art. So I want to start this out with a quote from Roger Ebert, who is always super cheery and always really loves everything. He says, "The fact is, Paint Your Wagon doesn't inspire a review. It doesn't even inspire a put down. It just lies there in your mind, a big, heavy lump." And well, I think that's maybe a bit too harsh. I get where he's coming from. So this is like a very infamous flop. It's a big budget musical at a time when they were sort of like going out of fashion. That genre has kind of waxed and waned a little bit. Now I think we're seeing a resurgence in that in a way, but it is 164 minutes. So it's very long. The musical numbers are not really that great. Clint Eastwood singing isn't great. The pacing just kills this movie. There is a really fun energy about it. It almost kind of has this like Heaven's Gate kind of feeling to it, which is another pretty infamous flop, but it's just the musical numbers are not that catchy. They're not that memorable. The singing quality is, I mean, I guess a matter of taste, but I think objectively, like Clint Eastwood is never going to be like a singer. That's fine. I certainly could not do that. Pauline Kael pretty infamously like toasted this movie as well. It seems like it has a bit of a cult following, and that's kind of why I think this got a really cool 4K release. It's just, you have to really be in it because there is so much of it. I like stuff like Seven Brides for Seven Brothers or stuff like that, that like maybe hasn't aged the best, but it's so charming. There's something so like captivating about it that you can kind of like excuse that. So this film kind of has those sort of problematic elements, but it's not fun enough to sort of get past them, I guess. It did lead to a really great Simpsons bit. So there's like a silver lining. This also looks really good. So this is like, of course, a much older movie than the other 4K titles. And yeah, looks really fantastic as well. There is maybe like a little bit of like debris and artifacts, but for the most part, everything looks really great. Colors really pop. I mean, this is a very visually interesting movie, at least. And I think like the 4K restoration really makes good use of that. Colors really pop. Sets are really cool. I'm trying not to spoil the ending, but the ending, just with like all the destruction, is so awesome. You've seen this, right? Like, I know you're a big musical. Okay, I'm keeping it really vague, but like, it's just like it has such a crazy ending, and like this comes from the writer of Marty and Network, Patty Chayefsky or something.
Chayefsky.
Yes. It's just very weird. Tonally, it's weird. The singing is not great. The musical numbers are not that memorable, but people like it. It has, like I said, it has a cult following. So if you're very curious, if you only know this from the Simpsons reference that I made, check it out. And as always with all of these, if you're a collector, you want the slipcovers, you want to do it right away, like you were saying with My Bloody Valentine. So it's an experience. It's just very long and uneven.
I wasn't even sure. I think whenever I first saw the Simpsons bit, if that was an actual movie outside of that the Simpsons universe. So whenever I did discover it, I was like, okay, I have to see this someday, and I guess now is that day to see it. But that Simpsons bit is great. I just like paint it with blood, I guess. Like that was one I probably never expected to see on 4K, but I'm glad that they decided to do it. And I'm not sure if you know this, but my latest Warner Archive video, I spoke about Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. So that's a weird coincidence that you had mentioned that. So if you want to hear my thoughts on Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, you can check out my latest Warner Archive video where I talk about that, which that actually had some really cool musical numbers. So it sounds like this one doesn't stack up in that regard, unfortunately. So can't even look forward to that. My next title is one from MVD Entertainment. It is Punto Rojo. It is a Spanish film from Nick Loretti, and this is kind of a testament to independent filmmaking. This is a really tight kind of weird character. Like, I don't like to compare everything to Quentin Tarantino. That kind of is a little offbeat, like structurally, but it is kind of Tarantino-esque. At the beginning of the film, I'm not going to give away like every single plot beat because that's just not what we do here. But at the beginning of the film, you meet this guy who's like in the middle of this field, listening to the radio. There starts being like a quiz that he kind of like, he's aware of like all the answers and stuff. So he decides to, for the next round, he like calls up and then he like gets through and starts answering all these quizzes. It's like a soccer quiz. He's really big like soccer hooligan person. Then like in the midst of like this, a man falls from the sky and lands on the hood of his car, and then like another person comes behind them, like parachutes in, and it kind of just kicks off this tale of like there's some flashbacks like how did he get here and like where was he before and who are all these people in this scenario. And you just kind of like this is a very compact film. I believe it's just like 70 minutes long. It's like no fat on this, but you get some interesting character moments, and you just get to know all these different people. It's not like a dialogue heavy movie, but it's like a really kind of offbeat narrative, kind of like a Tarantino movie. And just the way it all kind of comes together, and it's pretty violent at times, but it's also pretty like darkly funny. It's just a really solid comedic thriller. And I was very glad that I took a chance on it, because I read the synopsis and I was like, okay, this seems like it's promising. But then I watched it, I was like, oh, this is a lot of fun. And I really enjoyed it. And for horror fans, one of the most acclaimed horror films of last year was When Evil Lurks. And one of the main actors from that is the main actor in this, Demian Salomon. He is the lead of this. So if you're a When Evil Lurks fan, you can see that actor in this one too. So this Blu-ray from MVD Entertainment, this is only a couple years old, a movie. And the high definition transfer is solid. It looks good. The sound is good with the original Spanish 5.1. You do get an audio commentary track from the director, and the original 13-minute short, which is just like one specific segment of the movie that they basically replicate it for the movie, but with different actors. But you get that kind of original short that inspired the full-length film that they kind of adapted it into. So I was glad to see that as well. But overall, if you like kind of like fun little tight crime comedy thrillers, Punto Rojo is a pretty solid discovery.
Yeah, big fan of Spanish horror, so like that's awesome. I'm always like looking for like more of that stuff to devour. I'm really excited because this is a series that we've been covering for quite a while now. That's the film noir, The Dark Side of Cinema. And this one is a all Edward G. Robinson edition, which is really interesting. The quality varies, but I'm gonna get through these fairly quickly. So Vice Squad is the first one. Also, it's worth mentioning all of these have commentary tracks, which I love. So Vice Squad is kind of a day in the life of a like detective played by G. Robinson, of course. And it kind of like the framing device of the movie sort of reminds me of Detective Story, where it's a very sort of day in the life. It more or less kind of does like a cinema verite kind of approach to the subject. It's also interesting because this movie deals very heavily with like sex workers, but they can't really like say that. They have to say it without saying it. And I mean, this was like 1953, so the Hays Code was still very much in effect and enforced. But it was a way of just kind of getting around what they were really doing. But I don't know. It's so obvious. It's kind of weird. But unlike Detective Story, there's not like a really compelling sort of through line. I mean, there is, but it's not as sort of emotionally compelling as maybe something like Detective Story is. I mean, there is some like really genuinely kind of funny, like running gags. Like there's a witness, this very like timid guy. He doesn't want to give his account of events of the shooting of a cop because he was out with another woman. He doesn't want his wife to find out. His lawyer, it's crazy. His lawyer is literally like, "Oh, you know something? You saw something? Don't tell anybody. It's just gonna tie you up in court and like a trial and all this stuff." And I'm like, what? So but the funny bit is like they keep finding ways to arrest him to bring him back in like kind of funny ways. It's fine. I like Lee Van Cleef. He kind of has like a very small but interesting role in this. But there's some notable moments, but it's kind of forgettable. Black Tuesday is the next film, and I think that fares a little bit better. And of course, Edward G. Robinson is on the other side of the law this time. He basically kidnaps a group of people, including a reporter. I don't know. It's a little bit more interesting. The pacing is pretty solid in this. This is only 80 minutes long, and Robert Graves is the lead opposite of Edward G. Robinson. And it's got a lot of really good set pieces. Again, it like flows pretty well. It does keep you interested throughout, where Vice Squad maybe is a little bit like, I don't know, it's a little tedious at times, but I think Black Tuesday kind of fares a little bit better. I don't want to give away the ending, but I think the ending is really solid. I think the last one is maybe one of my favorite ones out of the set, and it is Nightmare. And actually, Kevin McCarthy is really the star of this. Edward G. Robinson sort of is on the cover, and he's a big part of this movie, but he's not really like this central character, which I thought was kind of interesting. But this takes on a more interesting kind of surrealist sort of vibe. Kevin McCarthy has this like nightmare where he thinks like he killed a guy, but he wakes up and it's like, oh, okay, that's not really what was happening. Yet he keeps finding like clues that this might not be just a dream. And I think that's a really interesting hook. And I think like for the most part, I think it follows through with this premise really nicely. I honestly think that like this is one of Edward G. Robinson's more stronger performances in his career. I mean, this kind of was well past his gangster days in the 30s, where he was getting maybe smaller, maybe more B movie roles. And this is based on a piece of Pulp Fiction, so you kind of can feel that. I like how it uses this idea of like dreams and dreamscapes and these like kind of weird imagery to kind of like manifest this really interesting mystery. I mean, there's like things that don't really make a lot of sense. Like Edward G. Robinson is a cop in this, and he basically sort of is allowed to investigate this like murder that he thinks his brother-in-law is a part of, Kevin McCarthy's character, without any restrictions. Like it's just like, oh, you can take a look at these files. Oh, we got evidence here. Or, it's like I don't think that's how that works, but it's a movie. All of these look really nice. These two titles come from a new 2K scan of the 35 millimeter fine grain, and they look really nice. There is a little bit of like artifacts and a little bit of blurring, but I think it overall looks really nice. This one doesn't really say that it has a new 2K scan. It looks maybe a little bit not as good as the other ones, but this being a little bit of like a more recent film than some of these other ones, still pretty good. As I said, all of these have commentary tracks, which I love. They're very much worth checking out. And this is a really nice set. I will have another one next week that I'm really excited to get into. But yeah, I like this series. Again, it's a little uneven at times, but I don't know. I like the through line of Edward G. Robinson being in all these. So it was kind of fun marathoning those movies with him in it.
Yeah, I'm a big Edward G. Robinson fan, more so since I've started getting in like more into physical media and just seeing all of his work. But everything I've seen, I've mostly enjoyed. So I'm excited to check out that set because that's three I have not seen. So definitely really looking forward to that one. But I love that series no matter who's starring in it. So I'm just glad that they're continuing. My next title is from 88 Films, and it is The Inspector Wears Skirts 2. It is the sequel to the next installment in this franchise, which I believe there's some more coming in a couple months. So that's the slip cover. It's a pretty thick cardboard slip cover. And then here's the artwork underneath. And I believe this is a reversible cover art. Yes, and I will reverse that really quickly. 88 Films usually does include reversible cover art. So here you can see the other cover art. And this does come with a poster, a fold-out poster, which I believe just has both of those artwork individually. So you get the newer artwork here, and then the other artwork here. No booklet in this one, but you have the disc art here. So yeah, I covered the first one a few months back, and I mostly enjoyed it pretty well. But this one I pretty much feel the same way, slightly different for slightly different reasons. It's not like my favorite like action comedy like martial arts film from Hong Kong, but it is still entertaining. This installment, it does a lot of what the first one does. It goes back to the kind of police academy format where not necessarily like the franchise police academy, but they go back to a literal police academy where some returning faces and some new faces added to the franchise. But because I think a lot of the people who kind of, whenever the first film was a success, they decided they wanted to take that success elsewhere. So they needed to like bring on some new blood because people got a bit like a big head and they wanted to like depart from the franchise. So you return to some people like learning at the police academy, and this is mostly for those who don't know, this is mostly a series based on women in the police force, and also how they're often like pit against the men, and kind of the sometimes like shenanigans that go on between them, and like them being taken for granted and all this kind of stuff, but then ultimately proving to be badasses who can solve crimes. What takes us down just a slight step from the first one for me is it does lean a little bit more on the comedic side of the spectrum, which while I do think there are things that are amusing, I just wish that they didn't treat it so much as a joke, which because I wish they would allow these women to be a little bit more formidable at times. But overall, I still enjoy it pretty well. I just, between it being a little bit more comedic and there not being as many impressive action sequences, it just doesn't quite rise to the level of the first one. But there are some amusing character developments, and the characters that do return from the first one, while not given a ton to do, there's some development on a couple fronts with like the instructors that are there. If you enjoyed the first one, I think it's worth checking out the second one. If you like action comedies like Hong Kong comedy or like martial arts films, it's still worth checking out. It's just out of all the stuff that 88 Films is putting out, it's not the strongest series for me. I'm still looking forward to checking out the future entries. It's just compared to what I think it could be with just like women kicking ass and like doing a bunch of cool stuff, it leans into a lot of like the male idea of what I think they're trying to criticize, but they kind of lean into it as well. So it's a little bit inconsistent. This does come from a new 2K scan, 2K restoration of the original camera negative. It looks very nice. It's been cleaned up very well. Colors are pretty saturated pretty well. I didn't see a lot of lingering print damage or anything like that. It's just a solid release. You do get a commentary track from Frank Jing, who he seems to do most of the commentary tracks for 88 Films. There's just a couple that have had other people. This does have the original Cantonese audio as well as an English dub. We prefer the original audio, but if you do like the dub, that is an option. There's also 3 interviews like with the filmmakers and like some of the performers as well, that run from about, I believe, like 7 to 15 minutes long. But overall, good release if you're a fan of the franchise. It's just I wish the franchise was just a little bit better.
That does sound a little cringy, as you were saying. Sometimes it's like the commentary it's making is almost kind of reinforcing some of that, which is unfortunate, but it sounds interesting. It'd be interesting to see how that series goes on. So my next title is Craig Before the Creek, and this one has a poster, which is really cool.
That's a pretty big poster.
Yeah. And it's basically just the cover art, but really cool. Like I said, I'm kind of surprised that this had a poster and not Rick and Morty, but I'm not mad at it. And then that's, if you want to know what the disc looks like, that's that. So yeah, this is of course a prequel movie that like sets up the stage for the regular series. I'm not super familiar with the series itself, so I can't speak to whether or not this is like super faithful to, you know, setting things up. But as somebody that hasn't seen it, I think it's kind of cool watching this first and then getting into just the regular mainstay series. But yeah, it's really cute. It's like a very Goonies kind of adventure. You have a wizard, you have pirates. I think the voice acting is really cool. I think that there's enough going on that it never feels overwrought at just 88 minutes. It pretty much flies by. There are like some moments where I think like things like the plot wise could have been maybe streamlined a little bit better, but overall it's a really fun time. There unfortunately doesn't seem to be any like extras on this. It's just the disc itself and the poster, but I think that this is a step up from streaming it on Max, say. And with Max, you never know what's going to be taken off. So if you really like this series, I would definitely check this out. It's kind of a shame this isn't paired with the regular series itself, but I can kind of see that too. If you collect the series and you know you don't want like a full package kind of thing, this is fine as a standalone. So yeah, I'm not a massive fan of the original series. So again, it's hard to really speak to how authentic this is, but it feels like it leads nicely into the main series. Like it definitely does a good job, I think, of like setting up who these characters are.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'd never seen the original show. I'd heard of it, like I've heard the name, but I'd never watched it before. But I, like you, I just jumped right into that new movie, and I was entertained by it. And it inspired me to, since watching that, I right afterwards I watched the first couple episodes of the series just to see how it compared. And it seemed like the animation style and the voice acting had been kind of finessed from the early episodes, because it's a few years old, and it's I'm not sure if it's still running or not, but it seems like what I watched on with the new movie compared to the original, it looked like a lot cleaner and like sounded a little bit better. Not that the early episodes were bad, but it just seemed a little bit more finessed and like high quality. But I did really like those first episodes as well. So if anyone, like if Warner Archive or just Warner Home Video ever released all of this as like a Blu-ray, I would love to like catch up with the show more, because while the original series is on Max, like you said, I don't know how long it'll be on Max. So I want to be able to like watch it all. If I'm going to invest, like, I know there was at least 4 seasons on Max. I'm not sure if that's the whole run. I don't want to get like halfway through and have them pull it. So I hope someone releases it on Blu-ray someday. I don't expect them to, but it would be very nice. I consider it a favor, Warner, if you do that to me. But my final title is one, it's a new disc from Sony. It is one of their it's them going into some pre-code territory, which I think is pretty cool. And that is Cocktail Hour, which has most notably Randolph Scott, which I did he's usually in his westerns, and I've done his Western Criterion set with Bud Bedecker last year. This also has BB Daniels. And this is a pretty solid pre-code. It's BB Daniels plays a woman who she is an artist, and she's kind of like just living her life, just having a good time. People seem to fawn over her, and she like creates like artwork for, I believe, like posters and book jackets and stuff. And she's just like doing her thing. And she's a very independent lady, and she is going on this trip to America, I believe, and she's like on this boat. She has recently left a man who like wants to be with her kind of, but is kind of blown her off a little bit, and it's just kind of like not treating her as well. Like he has kind of the ideas of like traditional gender roles, and she's not really about that. So she goes on this trip, and she like meets some people like on the boat, and there's one person, like one younger guy who's like obsessed with her and like following her around, and she meets this guy who she doesn't know is a married man, and kind of like gets into a thing with him. And it's all kind of just like in this guise of like a woman trying to maintain her independence within the like this kind of patriarchal society, with all kind of like these kind of madcap antics around her and stuff. And it's also a pretty short film. It's only an hour and 14 minutes long. For the most part, I quite enjoyed it. I think it kind of cheaped out and like succumbed to some of the, like I said, traditional gender role stuff at the end, where they didn't really quite let her be as free as I wanted her to. Not that it like completely annihilates everything that she set up, but I really would have wished they could have stuck with kind of the more feminist leanings, because I think it would have been a really cool example of like true early feminist like text that like let the character thrive. But overall, it's still a good movie, and I think I enjoyed what it was going for most of the time. And it's paced very well. It's just kind of like a madcap time. This release from Sony is pretty fantastic considering what they had to work with. There's a text screen at the beginning that says that this was giving it like a 4K restoration, and they kind of explain all the processes. But they also kind of say that whenever this was released, there were some cuts mandated by some of the people who were exhibiting. So like whenever it would go out, I think some bits were cut out, and not all of those bits survived. So like with some of the silent films I've covered, they had all the original like all the original audio. They just did not have all the original footage. So there's just a couple times in the movie where they supplement the audio with some production stills instead of like actual footage, because it just no longer exists. But it's implemented very well. The one scene where it's most prominent takes place at a bar, and I guess maybe people objected to the drinking. I don't know, but there's like a drunkard character that's interacting with her, and you can hear him speaking, but you just see like photos of them speaking. But whenever it's not dealing with that, the footage itself is fantastic. It's like, I know we don't like to compare everything to just one label, but this is Warner Archive level like like preservation, and it's a fantastic pre-code preservation effort from Sony. And I, with them doing so well on this and taking a chance on kind of this relatively unknown pre-code, I hope they continue to do that on these like manufactured on demand but not burnt. This is not a burnt disc, it is a pressed disc, but I hope they keep doing these release, like they do a lot of these, but I just mean like this old up in movie, like a pre-code movie. I think that'd be pretty cool. So the cocktail hour, it's a fun one if you like pre-code films, and there's a good mixture of like some people and some discoveries that probably didn't make it super big. There are no special features. I don't even think there's a menu screen from what I could get my remote to do. It's just like it starts up, plays, and when the disc ends, it ends. So but overall, it's a really good release.
Nice. Well, I mean, I also love pre-code films, so keep them coming. My final title, and I try to always kind of save the best for last, and that is Wednesday season 1. And I really, really enjoyed the show. I watched it all the way through twice now, and inside So we also do get this
Nice.
inside. And yes, so for those of you that haven't seen this series yet, it kind of was everything I wanted Sabrina to be, the Sabrina series, but that one just kind of wasn't. Like this one, I think nails that. Like, I don't know, she's an outcast among outcasts. I really love this. Like, right as soon as you get to the academy, like her roommate kind of like breaks everything down as far as some people are magic, some people are werewolves, some people are, and they all have their own cliques. I think that's really fun. And it's not just kind of a throwaway thing. Like at the end of the series season, there's like this huge battle that is so badass, but it utilizes everything you kind of know about what these students are capable of. It's almost sort of like X-Men style, but for like goths and weirdos, which I love. And this season pretty infamously ended on sort of a cliffhanger, but I am fairly confident this has been picked up for another season. So that's a little bit like moot. But Jenna Ortega, I love her so much. She just nails this role. Like as much as I love Christina Ricci as Wednesday, and for my generation, she definitely is my Wednesday Addams. Like I think she's just as good. She's really as good as Christina Ricci is. And Christina Ricci is in this, and I love her role as well. I'm gonna like not saying anything about her character to give anything away, but I was a little bit worried because I thought maybe it was just a little bit of stunt casting, but they really do something interesting with her character. That's all I'm gonna say. But I love it. This feels like a very lived in, interesting world. It has a really great mystery to tie everything together to keep you engaged. And yeah, I really love that it ties in the parents, Gomez and Morticia, in a really interesting way, again, with their past. And that's a whole other thing that I don't want to spoil. But if you haven't seen this, just do it. I'm so happy that this got a physical media release from Warner Brothers slash Netflix. Would have been nice if they had really decked this release out. But maybe if this does well, maybe we'll get like a more souped up like second season. Or correct me if I'm wrong, but this was just Blu-ray. There's no 4K of this.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Which, Warner Brothers has been rolling out the 4K of some of their like bigger titles like House of Dragons and stuff like that. Chernobyl also got a 4K release, but yeah, I think like no complaints on how it looks. It's obviously a very new season. I mean, a new series, and yeah, Upconvert looks really nice on Blu-ray. Again, it looks a little bit better than like streaming. I don't think like Netflix is maybe as bad as like taking stuff off their streaming service whole cloth, but it's just nice to have it. You never know. Just be one of those weirdos in your bunker hoarding all of these for a rainy day. you know, it's such a fantastic series, though. I am so happy. I was very worried. I wasn't sure how they were kind of going to kind of like make this interesting. And again, I think Sabrina the Teenage Witch started off interesting, but like kind of fell on its face. Anyways, it's great. You should check it out. You should buy it. Hopefully that sends a message that we want more seasons, want more, like we want a 4K release, all that good stuff. And yeah, that kind of closes out this episode. But like I said, I always like to try to end on a very high note. And this was definitely among my favorite new series. So check it out. And I always say, please, give this video a like, subscribe if you're not subscribed to the channel. We want to hear from you in the comments. I want to try to get together another giveaway sometime soon. So you want to be subscribed to check all that stuff out. And as always, thank you so much for hanging out with us.